If you want me to turn the recorder off, you just have to tell me. Okay, so how is everybody? And how is your week going?
Happy, tired. We ran around Louisville all day today looking for, we met my bonus daughter, who's a designer that's helping us pick out the flooring and the paint color and the tile and everything for the house. And by the time you do that, it wears you out. But the good thing is we got to play with our little 1-year-old grandson who, belongs to her, and we got to see him and play with him, and that was really fun. So it's all good. It's just super busy, but fun.
Good.
Well, I was telling Carla, we've been rehabbing a house about 20 miles from here, and we're just finishing it up. But in the midst of that, I walked in yesterday, and Bill had torn out our back doors out of the back of the house and took half the floor up. So, we got a lot going on. It's okay. So tomorrow I get to help him put the floor down. Yeah.
Well, I've been resting this week. Yesterday and Monday afternoon both, I just kind of stayed home and rested. Yesterday I actually sat outside in the sun, which was
good.
Yeah, I needed that vitamin D, so I just said, okay, I'm out in the sun today. So I read and played with my dog. But other than that, it's good. How about you, Jenny?
Had a really, really good weekend. Patrick and I went to see Mackenzie in Virginia because she leaves this Friday to go to Nevada. So it was good to have 2 of the 3 kids all together. So it was good.
Yay!
That is good.
All right.
It was really good because every time I cooked something, they would both, just think yummied and how good it was, and because neither one of them had home cooking for a while. So,
So you had a place where you could cook?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, Valerie, this room was it was $63 a night. We had 1 bedroom at one end that had a double bed, 1 bedroom at one end that had 2 twin beds, a common area with a eat-in dining room, and a full kitchen.
Wow.
And it had
Great.
Wow.
So it was really nice.
Was that at Virginia Beach?
It was on Langley Air Force Base.
Langley Air Force
So it was through the Air Force.
Oh, that was nice.
Yeah, I'm just going to start vacationing wherever Mackenzie's stationed.
Yeah, nice. All right. All right, I'm going to switch over here to the PowerPoint and get it going. Slideshow from the beginning. So we're going to do an overview of Hebrew scriptures. Let me move this little dude up at the top. Okay, so we're going to pray in, and I thought that since today was the solar eclipse, a nice picture of that would be appropriate for the pray-in. Anybody want to pray us in?
Sure.
Thank you.
Let's all take a collective, nice, deep breath. When you do that, on the in-breath, think peace. And on the out-breath, be still. We are so grateful to be hooked up together tonight, to share this time of study and learning and curiosity. Thank you, God, for this time and for these wonderful friends and for the connection that we all share. Our minds are open, our hearts are open, and we are ready. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. All right. So what do we have? Anything from last week that we need to look at? Anything come up in the reading that you want to talk about that we didn't really talk about last week?
We stopped about, did we get all the way to the end, or did we stop about Moses, or?
We stopped about where we should have, right about the Exodus, where Moses. So we're going to look at the Exodus tonight.
Okay.
Okay. So I had homework, thanks to Miss Robin. And to be honest, the patriarchal and matriarchal lineage, I couldn't really find where it's always been on the father's side. I really couldn't find any connection to the mother's side except for in Hebrews of the four moms. The original four moms, Sarah, Rebecca, my mind's gone. Leah,
Rachel.
and Rachel. Yep, that's it. So that is how, so it's always been patriarchal. Yeah. Even though the lineage in the Jewish tradition comes down through the mother, it's always still been a patriarchal society in itself. But because of the mothers giving birth to the children, that's why that's why they hold the lineage through the mom. It was very interesting and lots of information, and some of it I really didn't understand. But there's been no known civilization that was totally ran by women. I thought that
you can find.
that's known, correct? Yes.
Then wiped it all out.
Possibly. Now there have been women in power, but it's still been basically a patriarchal society, which I found to be interesting.
Good job on your homework, young lady.
Okay, so Denny, beware if you ask questions that we don't know the answer to in this group. You'll be looking at that.
It's okay. No problem.
All right. Even if it has nothing to do with the class, by the way. Okay, so in Exodus, and let me see if I can get, yeah, I'm just only one. In Exodus, we have Israel's time of slavery in Egypt, Exodus itself, the covenant, the laws given at Sinai, and the 40 years through the wilderness to the promised land. The Exodus story is the most important story of Israel. And Israel, the nation of Israel, is referred to as she, as the mother of the society, which is another reason why they follow the lineage through the mom, because that Israel itself is considered to be the female, which was interesting. The events gave birth to Israel, the story of the origins par excellence. The story narrates the perennial struggle between the world of empire and liberating will of God. So it's that conflict between Pharaoh and God. Last week we talked about how in the structure with Abram and Sarah and the founding generations, there was the promise and the fulfillment with the threat of something in between the two. And that's kind of what happens here, is you have that same scenario. You have that struggle between God and the fulfillment. So between man and God and the fulfillment is what I want to say. The Exodus combines the historical memory with the metaphorical narrative. Use of literary artistry, dramatic hyperbole, extraordinary numbers. So they exaggerate from time to time to get their meaning across. It's memorable with both theological and psychological insights. Exodus is rooted in the historical experience of ancient Israel. It's the memory of the slavery imprint in the Hebrew Bible. Any questions, comments so far? Okay. So it's a serious threat to the promise made to the ancestors. So what happens is the new Pharaoh comes to power in Egypt. So last week we talked about the Pharaoh and Joseph, and how Joseph was powerful and the people were powerful through Joseph in his relationship with the Pharaoh because of the dreams. And now we have a new Pharaoh that comes to power in Egypt. And with the new Pharaoh, once again, Israel's enslaved by the imperial power. They have extremely hard labor. They have the killing of, it's supposed to say male, not mall babies. So we have genocide, what we consider today to be genocide. And there's no future. So once again, there's a threat to that promise made to the ancestors. So then in Exodus, we have Moses. So the birth of Moses is at the beginning of Exodus. And everybody knows the birth of Moses, correct? Okay. So his mom pushes him out in the weeds of the river. And the princess finds it. So this Exodus also has his life story. He's the liberator of Israel. And by that we mean God calls and he experiences the sacred. He changes his life at the burning bush, which in unity we would say transformation. When he meets with God, that divine radiance, the I am who I am, that is the catalyst for the change in him. And then he goes on to meet with the Pharaoh, go back and meet with the Pharaoh, and the plagues come because of the Pharaoh's unwillingness to let the slaves go. So God sent the plagues and said, let my people go. And that went on through the 9 plagues, and then it's at the 10th plague, which was the death of the firstborn of the Egyptians, we have the Passover. And then Pharaoh relents, changes his mind, which is a threat again, they go to the sea, and God rescues them again. I'm paraphrasing the story. And then we have the Song of Praise, which is attributed to Miriam's sister to Moses. Miriam's sister to Moses. And it's recorded to be the oldest part of the Hebrew Bible, which I found to be very interesting. And then we journey through the desert. We're led through the pillar of cloud, but by the pillar of clouds through the day and the column of fire at night. We're nourished by God. We get water from rock, manna from the sky in the morning, and quails in the evening. Am I the only one that had never really heard about the quails in the evening?
I thought the same thing when I read it.
Had anybody
I
else?
didn't remember that. I remembered manna from sky. That's it, manna from heaven, and that's all I knew.
Yeah, I had never heard that.
Okay. I found that to be very interesting. Well, because that would come from earth, and the manna comes from heaven. So the manna's from God, the quail's from the earth. That's kind of, I thought was interesting.
Mhm.
Well, I actually never realized that for Jews, the Exodus was the big deal. That was the most, because we had always heard about the creation, and it just was a surprise to me, and it shouldn't have been, particularly with as much time as they spent on it in the Hebrew Bible. But it was just a surprise to me that it was really the be-all, end-all, of importance, because the Jews, it was their time that they were put in slavery, and then they were gotten out of it, and all of it is very, very interesting as a story, but it's also very interesting metaphysically too, or metaphorically.
Yeah, it really is. I didn't realize that when the first time I took this class myself. That was new to me.
Well, I've been in Unity too long.
Just like
I haven't been studying the Bible, and it's really very interesting. And I have to say, this book, the Borg book, it's really down to earth and very interesting. He makes it so you understand what he's talking about. It's not so far out there that you can't understand it.
Yeah, I really like the book.
Yeah.
And growing up in Unity, I know the stories. But when you know the stories, you don't know all the details. You just know the overview, kind of like what I said as I was going through the story. You just hit the highlights. And I guess that's why, it's like quail. Okay, that's interesting. I've never really seen it before.
Yeah.
So then Moses is also the lawgiver. And that the giving of the laws occurs in Sinai. And it's a manifestation of God and the sacred. So Moses ascends the mountain, and there at the place where heaven and earth meet, goes to meet God. So he's the mediator of the covenant and the giver of divine law. And this is when Israel really becomes a people and nation. And Bort goes on in the book to talk about how Israel and Israelites are used earlier in the chapters and in the Bible, but the nation did not really come to formation until this point in time. And I found that to be interesting because I really never thought about it before.
I figured it was they were always united.
Right, I did too. But it makes sense. The giving of the law. So the 10 Commandments, and there's supposedly 2 different forms. And then the Book of Covenant, and the rest of the laws in Exodus, Leviticus, and
Leviticus.
yeah, Leviticus and Deuteronomy, honoring, whatever. And the laws are collected over periods of time, centuries. So all the laws that are written were not all given to Moses. They were collected over periods of time, centuries, and there are ethical laws, rituals, laws, civil and criminal laws. We talked about that a little bit last week. I think there, if I remember from last week, what I said, there was like 691 different laws in the Hebrew Bible.
Well, you all probably talked about this last week, but one of the interesting things I thought that he said was that he was talking about how a man was not allowed to commit adultery with some other, someone's wife.
Right.
But it didn't say anything about the wife committing adultery with somebody else's husband. And he said, he was talking about how it came from a male perspective. And I'd never really thought about that, but and also the fact that the Ten Commandments were basic laws with how to live nice, play nice with other people. So that's basically what they were. And I thought that was very interesting too, that they really were, the Ten Commandments were basic being nice laws. But some of these laws that he came up that they have are a little strange, and some of them were things I'd never heard of, like the ones where every Sabbath year all debts owed by Israelites to other Israelites are to be forgiven, and all Hebrew slaves released. I mean, it was just interesting to read all that.
Yeah, it was. And I don't know, I'd heard of it before. It's kind of like when people did indentury servants to America. After 7 years, you were free.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of where that came from. But I didn't realize that that was Jewish law. I didn't know that's where it came from until I'd studied this the first time. So that it is interesting that, so it really was the provisions for social and economical society. It was to prevent the impoverishment of the class within Israel. So no interest charged on loans to other Israelites. Now you could charge loans to other people, charge interest to other peoples, but not to Israelites. And the Sabbath, the 7 years, all debt relates to each other. And then to Jubilee, the 50-year, all agricultural land returned at no cost to original family of ownership.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
So, and I'm assuming that the original family of ownership would be the 12 tribes.
That's what I was kind of wondering. I mean, how far back do you actually go?
I think they're talking about the 12 tribes. Because if we're in that time, then that would make sense.
Right.
Because that lineage they have. That's another reason for the lineage of the 12 tribes.
I told Pete when I was reading this, I read this out loud to him, and I said, I don't think the 1%ers in the U.S. would like this today.
Very true. Well, We're so mixy-uppy, we couldn't figure it out anyways. We're at the Oneness Institute now, so, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
we're all one. So we should just continue these laws forever for all humanity.
Native Americans.
Yes, they would. She said Native Americans would appreciate it.
Yes, yes.
All right. So now we come to the covenant. And again, this time we have the threat from within. So the people of Israel are unfaithful to God. And so that creates the threat of extinction. So God threatens to destroy them. Moses steps in, God relents, and we have a new covenant. So if you watch the Ten Commandments, you know how Moses comes down the mountain and he starts getting upset because they have the golden calf. That's where we're at. That's what we're talking about here. So the conquest of Canaan is really about that Exodus generation that can't enter the promised land because of their breaking of God's law while Moses was on the mountain. They have to spend 40 years in the wilderness, and they're not ever allowed to enter the promised land. So the exile slaves from Egypt never actually get into the promised land. And their descendants camp east of the Jordan River, which is the border of the promised land. And Moses speaks to the people before they cross the Jordan. And it's kind of like his farewell speech. And then Moses dies. I had that on a slide somewhere. I don't know where it went. And then we go to the book of Joshua, which is where the conquest of Canaan, Jericho falls. We have disobedience again. Achan is disobedient and Ai is captured. We have the southern part of Canaan subdued, and then the northern part is subdued. So the land is split out again to the 12 tribes of Israel. And then Joshua heeds the warning, love thy God. Should say thy God. And then so here again, we have the promise, the threat, and fulfillment.
The next slide is.
What is it? I got them out of order. So everybody knows how Jericho falls, right? We blow the. Okay. And then the last book of the Pentateuch is the death of is Deuteronomy, and that's where Moses dies. He's 120 years old. He climbs to the top of Mount Nebo, east of the Jordan. God shows Moses the promised land, and Moses is the greatest of the prophets. I'd never really considered Moses to be a prophet.
I never realized how important he was until Lord pointed it out. You know, and then when you think about it, I mean, supposedly he saw God face to face.
Right.
And then he talked about the possibility that God buried him
Right.
in a story.
Jenny, I can't hear what you're saying. Your little soft voice.
I'm sorry, I said I never realized how important Moses was until Board pointed it out. You know, about them seeing God face to face and the possibility of God actually burying Moses after he died. just never occurred to me.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else we need to talk about with Moses or Exodus or? Well, y'all gonna get me through here fast tonight, aren't you?
I just thought it was all fascinating. And I love in his book reading the notes at the end of the chapter.
Hmm.
Let me see, like,
Carla, you're a brave woman.
what? Oh no, I just skipped through some of it. But like, when they're talking about the plagues, and although it says the fifth plague kills all the livestock of Egypt, there are still livestock alive to be killed in the subsequent plagues of boils and hail. So somebody didn't get the story quite straight.
Yeah, there are some pretty fascinating things in the notes.
I did not, I remember the story of Moses, and I remember about the Red Sea parting. I think we even had a song as a little kid that went along with that. But I'm like Jenny, I didn't think about that he was the most important prophet, or really that he had the major role that he had, and especially to the Jewish people.
Well, part of it to me is that I don't think we were ever, I mean, we learned from the quote Old Testament, but we weren't taught that it was really important to us as Christians because it was old and it had all these things that probably didn't quite happen that way. And it really is, to Jews, it's the Hebrew Bible, and it really is the most important thing. And we're so infatuated with the creation story, and that's just not a big deal to them. It came after the story of the Exodus,
Right.
but it's placed at the beginning because it's the beginning, but technically it's not nearly as important to Jews as, and the other thing that to me is comes out in all of this is that Jews are so into taking care of each other and making sure people are taken care of socially and making sure that we take care of our brothers, and that's shown with the interest loans and with all the different things that, the laws that are set down, the things that happen. It's just an interesting thing to see what's really important for their religion and what has been important for our religion. And they should be pretty similar, but yet they are, but yet there are these big differences of main focus, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, and not only as religion, but just the culture of the people, the Israelite people. It's very important. A lot of the laws we think are silly, but you can't eat this, you can't eat shellfish. There's certain things you can't eat, you can't eat. But during that time and that period of humanity's development, some of that stuff will kill you. You know, if you didn't, cook it right, if you ate it raw. So really, it was that taking care, as Denny said, of the fellow man. Hey, we found out this doesn't work for us. Don't eat that, kind of thing. But it also so it goes back to being a culture It was the way that they lived their life. And it became, to me, it became a religion after the fact. More so probably when Christianity was developed. Then that's when religions were really separate. Before
Well,
that,
don't you think that's because we did separate them?
yeah,
I mean, we said you believe this and we believe that, and so there had to be two different factions because of that.
correct. Yes. But I think that the Christian founders knew that civilization itself came through in that area of the country where they were located at that point in time, came through that lens, that actual culture of development.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So, to sum it up, I think this is the most important story for the Israel and her people. It shapes their understanding of the divine-human relationship, their identity, life as a community, and the vision of God. There's two social classes, the elite ruling and the peasant workers. And it's the story of protest against a liberation. The will of God to create oneness, no monarch. Where do we hear this at today? Is there anything on any of these points that we couldn't say exists today?
Some things never change.
Right.
We play it out over and over and over again.
The same story of history, of humanity. So the covenant was the creation of a free world, social justice, and shalom, which is peace and wholeness, which is framed by the whole promise and fulfillment.
And patience. It might take 40 years.
That's right. And you may never see it.
You're right.
All right. So Israel settled in the promised land. And we have a tribal confederacy. And now we have, look, we go from tribal living and from that covenant, that new covenant that we had, into about 100 BCE monarch with King Saul. And then the next king is David. And King David unified the new kingdom, and he made Jerusalem the capital. And then King Solomon built the temple, on Mount Sinai, and extended the kingdom to its greatest size. And the two kingdoms. Solomon's death came about 922 BCE. The northern kingdom is Israel, and the southern kingdom is Judea. The classical prophets' time was during the divided kingdoms, the destruction, exile, and return. So here we went from living in the promised land to where we were a couple of slides ago, up here to the creation of the free world. So we went from tribal living, a free world with social justice and shalom, to have the whole promise and fulfillment, into the monarchy again, into the destruction, exile, and return, and the divided people.
Where are we at in the book?
Okay, hold on. You're actually in the prophets.
Okay. I was lost.
We are
Page 112.
Thank you.
It's chapter 6.
So what do we know from our
There it is.
adulthood about the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judea?
Well, Judea got destroyed, didn't it? And then the survivors had to go someplace else,
Yes,
and they went to Babylon, and then they came back after a while, and they tried to start rebuilding it.
right. Very good. So the northern kingdom, Israel, what we think is Israel, lasted into 722 BCE. It was conquered and destroyed by the Assyrian Empire, and it disappeared from history. So the people were either killed and massacred, so we have genocide again, or they were just absorbed into a whole new empire, a whole new race and culture of people as slaves. And then the southern kingdom, or Judea, was conquered and destroyed by the Babylonian Empire in 586 BCE. Some survivors were exiled to Babylon. The exile lasted for 50 years. And then, as Jenny said, the exiles were permitted to return and rebuild their country. So when they rebuild their country, they also rebuild their temple. Oops. All right. So now, as we continue looking at the prophets and the history around what's going on, we'll actually start looking at the individual prophets next week. But part of what he talks about in the book is the comparison between the things that are going on during this time in the culture, and how later they're correlated to the New Testament. So how, for example, we have the prediction and fulfillment is what they call it. Says from the first chapter, Matthew uses a prediction fulfillment formula. He narrates the story of the angel telling Joseph in a dream that Mary is pregnant by the Holy Spirit. He quotes a passage from the 8th century prophet Isaiah. All this took place to fulfill what has been spoken by the Lord through the prophet. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. So the virgin birth had been predicted. And Matthew uses that prediction fulfillment formula 5 times, all in connection with Jesus' birth and infancy. It says that after Jesus is born in Bethlehem, it has been written by the prophets, and then he quotes words from Malachi. And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judea, are by no means least among the rulers of Judea, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel. So now we're going from the promise, threat, fulfillment to the prediction and fulfillment. So the prophets themselves are actually dealing with what's going on in the culture during the destruction of the northern and southern kingdoms. And they are out on the streets, rioting, talking, just like today, when people start a revolution and change society. So I liked some of the instances he gives. He talks about during the 60s, because that's when he was in college. And I relate to that. And how it's very similar to what we do today, and how, the young people in college were standing up for what their beliefs were and for what was right, what was social. So we're going back to social justice again. We're trying to get back to the oneness. So we go from that period of we're living in the tribal community and we're all basically taken care of, but then we get conquered by the first king, King Solomon. He takes over, so our ego takes over, and then we're trying to get back to that oneness. And we're trying to overcome all the destruction, all the war, all the fighting and famine and plagues and disease and everything that comes through that destruction. And the whole culture was destroyed. Well, first it was split into 2 parts, and then it comes back together, and then it's destroyed again. And through it all, the people of Israel continue to rebuild. Some of the exiles from Babylon, the slaves that were captured, and some of them didn't want to return because they didn't know any other life. They were born in captivity. They were born into Babylon. And so that was the culture that they knew. And when they were told that they could return to their homeland, well, they didn't have a homeland to return to because they were already there. So it created a lot of conflict within the generations also. Of course, we don't know where Babylon is today. We're still looking for it. Oh, and I have to say this right now because I will forget. When I was searching for the information on the patriarchal, I found a website. It's called ancientorigins.net. And it's pretty cool. It has all kinds of new archaeological findings, and most of it's stories, but there are some videos. And one of the things that I saw just when I was glancing, because anytime I run across a website like that, I can get pulled in for days. Because I am a big history buff and archaeology buff. So, but one of them was fascinating that they found a clay tablet that's over 2,200 years old of drawing of the city of Rome, part of it. So it's like the blueprint of the city that they found.
Did you say it was ancient?
Isn't that a television show?
Ancientorigins.net? I don't know.
Ancient Origin.
Yeah.
I've heard of that somewhere.
Origins. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Origins. Let's see if I can get out of here. No, me, I'll just go see if I can find it. I'll go find it for you guys because it was really cool. And then I'll come back to today, but I'm not used to this computer. Oh, I might not be able to search for it here. Let me see. Might have a dot, ancient dot origins dot stop. Okay. This is not it. You know how when you find something and then you can't find it, how frustrating that is?
Mm-hmm.
Google, if you Google ancient origins, it'll come up, I promise.
Okay. You know, I don't remember when I was a kid. I don't know if the Christian church I went to downplayed the prophets, but I loved reading this part about how on fire they were for social justice and what a chance they took, you know, with their voices ringing out against the establishment per se, and what danger that placed them in. And I have no doubt they had some super kind of sacred experience which gave them the fire in their belly to be able to do this.
There's a hyphen in between the ancient and the origins.
Okay, Jenny said there's a hyphen in between the ancient and the origins. Yes, that's it. And you know, what I remember is, what I didn't realize is that they were speaking out against the establishment. I knew that, but I didn't realize that they were speaking for that social justice, that freedom, that oneness.
Yes.
All to be equal. I didn't ever get that because we didn't study the prophets a whole lot in unity. You know, I mean, I think I heard about them probably more from my grandmother's church or something like that, because I'd heard of the prophets, the names, Ezekiel, Isaiah, Malachi. You know, I knew the names, but I don't know that I really knew what they stood for and who they were. And
It's interesting to go back as an adult, isn't it?
Yeah. I know that I did not understand that they were for equality for all people. Yeah. Or that they were at a time when society or the culture of the people at that time were at war again, and war from inside again. So how many have taken time to read any of the Bible part of what we've been going through?
I've only made it.
What was the last part of your sentence? Have we read the Bible? What?
How many of you have had a chance while we're going through all this that you've actually read any of like Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, the Judges? I mean, we skipped like 500 years between Joshua and the Kings.
No, I have not since we've done it. I barely get the reading done in this book in time for class.
Good. That's good. Well,
it's honest.
one of the things that I did was read in Exodus the story about Moses and the structure of the Bible, because I always had a hard time getting through some of the stories. I mean, to me, I always read the Old Testament when the kids were like at that 9 and 10-year-old age, when they liked the yucky. So then I would pull out the Old Testament for Sunday school and let that age kids do the Old Testament, because they like all the boring guts and everybody killing each other and all their misery. But I just found it to be very interesting how it's all played together. And I know there were chapters in it that I probably have never really read, because, to be honest, I saw it on the TV show, so I saw the Ten Commandments, so I know Moses' story. And when I went back and was just kind of flabbergasted that how it goes. I mean, so when God establishes the covenant with Israel, if you read the story, it's like on the third moon after the Israelites had gone out of the land of Egypt, on that very day, they came into the wilderness of Sinai. So, I mean, that's very detailed on the third moon, how he kept time back then. They journeyed from Rephidim and entered the wilderness of Sinai and camped in the wilderness. Israel camped there in front of the mountain. Then Moses went up to God. The Lord called to him from the mountain, saying, Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob and tell the Israelites, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now therefore, if you obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be treasured possessions out of all peoples. Indeed, the whole earth is mine, but you shall be for me a priestly kingdom and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the Israelites. I just found that to be very, it was very elegantly stated, and I hadn't really read it like that before. And then I tried to find the two different versions of the Ten Commandments. I think this is it. So I think the first one is, you shall not make for yourself an idol, whether in the form of anything that is in heaven above or in earth beneath it. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing children for the inequity of parents to the third and fourth generations of those who reject me, but shall steadfast love to the 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. I'd heard they said God said godless and punishing, but I had never really read that in the Bible. So I went to look for the two different versions of the Ten Commandments. I thought that was interesting. Okay, we got anything else? We went through stuff pretty quick tonight. But if everybody's good with where we're at, I'm willing to let us end early. I've only been here for an hour. Sorry, I didn't know my phone was on. So is everybody all caught up?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
Okay.
I just after 5 right before class, so.
All right. So then what we're going to do is we'll get out early tonight. We can read. I'm going to turn this off. Let me turn off the recording. Is that right here? So just to reiterate what we've been talking about, the assignment for the class is going to be, we're each going to find our individual topic that we choose and share something from a video, internet coverage, book. I don't care where you get the information from. I just thought the internet, because there's so much crazy stuff out there about some of the stories in the Bible and the different things that we can use. And a lot of the new archaeological sites and things, which is why I like that. I'm glad I found that Ancient Origins .net today. So,
And we will also need to figure out how we're going to get it in front of everybody. So we may have to send you a link for it, or prepare it somehow and get it to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think you can.
I can do that.
People can present.
I think I can set this up so that other people can present. And I will look at doing that this week. I'll do some research myself. All right.
That sounds great.
And then Denny, you weren't here the first week. I don't think. I might have emailed you about this. On the Wednesday, the week of, I think it's like the 23rd, whatever that day is. Skip that week, and we're going to meet. The last day that we're supposed to be in class is like on the 23rd, and I'm actually not going to be here. We're going to actually do it the next week on the 30th.
Okay.
Does that work for you? I hope
that works for me. Not a problem.
Yay, because I'm doing my Resilient Families project training that day. All right. Love you all. Go find.
Love you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Night.
Bye. Night.
Good to see you, Carla and Jenny. Bye.
Yes, bye you all.